Good morning to our friends joining in from Europe. Salamat sore to those in Indonesia. And good afternoon and good evening to those from other parts of the world. Apologies for the slight delay in starting this, technical hitches, but we are on and we are set to go. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of the Indonesia European Business Forum 2022, welcome to our panel on investing in energy transition. My name is Sumit Datta from Indonesia Business Partners, and I am very privileged to be your host for this session. We have a really compelling subject, energy. We have some great speakers and panelists. So let's make this fun and interesting. We will kick off this session with a 5-minute prelude by Bapa Arshad Rashid, followed by a panel discussion for 45 minutes and then a Q&A from all those listening to us. So let me start by introducing our very eminent speaker for the prelude. Bapa Arshad Rashid is the chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin. He's also president director of PT Indika Energy, Indonesia's leading integrated energy firm, and he serves in many other organizations in senior capacities. He is a graduate from Pepperdine University in the US, and he has been associated with Yale, Harvard Kennedy School, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, and Oxford at various stages in his career. Bapa Arshad, over to you. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Her Excellency Ibu Retno Marsudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Bapak Erlangga Hartarto, the Coordinating Minister of Economic Affairs, Mr. Darmawan Prasojo, President Director of PLN, Ms. Claire Francis, Regional Head Client Coverage Europe, Standard Chartered, Mr. Christopher Gower, CEO of Altilium Group, Mr. Antonio Sierra Musientes, CEO of Ignis Energia, and Mr. William Lin, Executive Vice President, Region, Cities, and Solution of British Petroleum, or BP. Ladies and gentlemen, a good afternoon. It is my great honor to give my remark here in today's Indonesia Europe Business Forum 2022. On this occasion, I would like to underline that climate change is a significant global issue that will worsen to intolerable levels if it is not addressed in a timely manner. Under the Paris Agreement in 2015, countries around the globe agreed to work together to aim to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Indonesia has also committed to global climate change initiative, including the net zero emission target by 2060 or sooner, if possible. As the global economic recovery continues, trade and investment remain central in promoting growth and accelerating the global recovery. The post-pandemic recovery serves as a perfect timing for investors to focus on green, resilient, and sustainable future. Energy sectors is becoming more relevant than ever. Furthermore, foreign private investment in productive capacities, particularly in renewable energy and green transition, can play a significant role in sustainable economic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia's current renewable energy contribution is still holding at 12%. Indonesia fully realizes it must step up its renewable energy transition, especially considering by 2025, Indonesia is expected to achieve the use of renewable energy by up to 23% as the national energy source. The huge potential that Indonesia has for generating renewable energy, which is solar, hydro, electric, geothermal, and wind energy, which can all be harnessed in various parts of the country, make investing in Indonesia's green energy sectors a lucrative opportunities. The current annual investment in clean energy capacity is approximately 132 trillion rupiah between 2015 and 2030. It is expected to grow by 227 trillion rupiah as demand for energy continues to grow. However, in the energy transition towards carbon neutral or net zero emission in 2060, Indonesia still needs an investment of around 25 billion US dollars per year, or around 360 trillion rupiah per year. Ladies and gentlemen, there are, of course, several bottlenecks that need to be solved to unlock the renewable energy potential and achieve net zero emission target in Indonesia. Limited infrastructures and proven technology. As an example, businesses are currently finding it difficult to justify investment in net zero energy at this stage due to limited infrastructures and technology. To remove these roadblocks, public and private corporations are required to fund the project and break through to help businesses to realign their business models towards net zero. Then, market entry barriers. Government decision to give energy subsidies for fossil fuels, regulate electricity tariff, and unattractive and renewable energy tariff have indirectly created barriers for energy companies transition into greener energy. Then, limited option for power generation companies. Power generation companies have limited choice to change the power generation technology due to the agreement with PLN. Any changes in the power generation will need to be reflected in the power purchase agreement, which is highly regulated and might take years for any changes to take place. Ladies and gentlemen, recognizing these obstacles, Kadin, or the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, will continue to promote efforts to support the government and businesses, as well as stimulate investment in pushing Indonesia toward a more environmentally friendly future. We have initiated a number of programs. First, we call the Kadin Net Zero Hub. Kadin is launching a Net Zero Hub in the first quarter of 2022 as a platform to build critical mass in the net zero emission movement and support companies at all stages of their net zero journey. Kadin also continue to support the implementation of the RUPTL, or the Energy Plan of 2021 to 2030, or the Energy Transition Programs. PLN recently published what we call Rencana Usaha Penyediaan Tenaga Listrik, or Electricity Supply Business Plan, or RUPTL 2021 to 2030, which aims to increase the share of renewable energy to 51.6% of the total planned additional electricity generation capacity. Through efforts such as converting diesel power plants into renewable plants and retiring all coal-fired power plants. To support this, Kadin hosted a CXO webinar forum to raise awareness in the private sector. Kadin has also been in close coordination with renewable energy developers, contractors, and value chain industry to work with PLN to enhance the procurement and implementation of this new RUPTL. Last but not least, the impact investment for climate positive enterprises. Green financing is on the rise globally and has been proven to reduce CO2 emission by promoting investment in sustainable projects. Kadin established the Indonesia Impact Fund in 2019 via the APEC Business Advisory Council, or ABAC, Indonesia. The fund prioritizes investment to achieve sustainable development goals in areas such as empowering climate-smart innovation and energy transition. In this opportunity, Kadin would also like to emphasize the importance of close collaboration between the private and public sectors, as well as the international stakeholders, to accelerate energy transition and promote global investment towards renewable energy. In the spirit of public and private collaboration, the government also need to initiate a clearer guidance and more transparent procurement processes on renewable energy projects, introduce an optimal tariff of renewable energy generation, facilitate stimulus packages, and encourage green energy initiative. By getting these strategies in place and cutting down the regulatory bottleneck, Indonesia can become the world's leader in clean energy. Gentlemen, to conclude my speech today, I would like to invite everyone in this webinar to actively participate in today's dialogue. Hopefully, from this discussion, we can come up with some new investment ideas to help accelerate the energy transition to help Indonesia meet its commitment to the global climate change initiative. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Bapa Arshad, for your thoughtful and constructive comments. Really good to see what Kadin is doing to taking Indonesia to a net zero status position, and really good to hear that there are concrete steps to take us to this destination. We now proceed to the next stage of our event, which is the 45-minute panel discussion, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A from the floor. For those of you who've been patiently with us all this while and have been listening in, if you have any questions of our panel members, please type in your questions in the Q&A button on your Zoom screens, and we will respond live to as many of these questions as we can. So don't be shy, type away. To kick things off, let me begin by introducing our very distinguished panel members to all of you. Our first panel is Bapa Edwin Nugraha Putra, EVP Systems Planning for PLN. Now, for those of you who do not know PLN, PLN is the biggest electricity distributor in Indonesia, also the only electricity distributor in Indonesia. So it has the staggering responsibility of distributing electricity to 280 million consumers, SMEs, and corporates all across this vast country of Indonesia, spread over 17,000 islands. Pa Edwin has many years of experience in this sector, and we are very happy to have him, someone of his experience, talking to us. Our second panelist is Ms. Nikki Grady-Smith, SVP, Corporates and City Solutions for BP. Nikki has worked in BP for 17 years in key positions including marketing, brand, and retail, in areas including alternative energy, gas, shipping, and downstream. Nikki, I know there was a big announcement by BP yesterday, so thanks very much for joining this event at short notice. We appreciate BP's commitment to Indonesia. We next have Senor Antonio Sierra, who is the founding partner and CEO of Ignis Group, who is based in Spain. Ignis is the leading renewable energy developer and operator in Spain, with a pipeline of more than 22 gigawatt of solar, PV, and wind energy projects, and it is the fastest growing energy company in Europe. Senor Antonio has over 25 years of experience in this industry and a track record of developing business alliances and identifying new markets and opportunities. Welcome, Senor Antonio. We also have Christopher Gower, Chief Executive of Altilium, with over 35 years of experience in business in many international companies. In 2016, Chris became the Chief Executive Officer of Altilium Group, a company which has a unique method of processing lateritic ore to extract all the value while leaving behind no harmful residue, which is a boon for countries like Indonesia with huge reserves of nickel and cobalt. Chris is based in Jakarta. Salamat sore, Chris, and welcome to this event. And we have Alper Cilik, who is the Global Head of Project and Export Finance at Standard Chartered Bank, based out of London. Standard Chartered has a target to deliver 75 billion in sustainable finance and clean tech financing by the end of 2024, and 300 billion in green and transition finance by 2030. We hope that Alipur and Stanchart spend most of this money in Indonesia, and we welcome Alipur to this panel. This completes our panel, 5 very accomplished people with almost 150 years of cumulative experience on energy, renewables, and energy transition. For those of you watching this event, get your questions ready because you will not find a better informed audience to be able to answer your questions for you. So let's kick off with the very first question, which will be to Pa Edwin, EVP for Systems Planning for PLN. Pa Edwin, I just want to check. I know Pa Edwin was going to be a little bit late. Pa Edwin, are you here already?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Pa. So, Pa, first question to you. PLN is tasked with delivering electricity to 280 million consumers, yeah? And Indonesia has committed to very ambitious targets in terms of alternative energy, which includes generating 23% of renewable energy of its total energy needs by 2025 and achieving a net zero status in carbon emissions by 2060. So the question to you is, what is your roadmap for PLN and also for Indonesia during this energy transition period? And just to make it a little bit controversial and a little bit fun, do you believe that Indonesia is actually going to meet these ambitious targets and commitments which it has made? Over to you, Pa.
Okay, Pa. Thank you, Pa. Thank you very much. Well, maybe I need to answer the second question, Pa, because we have this kind of forum. I believe that Indonesia will be able, Pa, to get the 2060 net zero emissions, Pa. That's why we need this kind of forum, right? Okay, Pa, that's the question for the second one. But for the first one, Pa, well, right now, because of the COVID, the demand of the system getting very low in Indonesia. Well, if we compare with the RUPTL 2019, there is a slowdown of 3 years, Pa. So it is hoped that by 2025, the load, the energy will be 361 terawatt hours. But if we use the demand forecast right now, it will happen at 2028. So there will be a slowdown of 3 years. And then we know that at 2015, government asked PLN to have 35,000 megawatts of power plant coming to the system for 5 years. And those power plants right now is coming into the systems. So in the one side, we have a lot of power plant that will come to the system, but in the same times, we have a slowdown of the load right now. So what we will face right now, Pa, for the next 2 to 5 years is that we will have a condition of oversupply. But as our commitment in PLN, as well as the commitment of government to the world, that at 2025, we will achieve the 23% of renewable energy. So how PLN do that in the condition of oversupply? There are several ways that PLN will do. First, that for the remote area that is not connected to the main grid, we will change the diesel power plant over there with solar and batteries. By doing this, we hope that the electricity cost over there will be muchly the same with the diesel or even less, so that we will confirm that the system of the solar and battery can change the fossil power, the fossil energy to become green energy. So, and by doing that, we hope by 2025, there will be 1.2 gigawatt peak solar PV will come into the system, and several battery will be introduced to have at least 8 hours or 12 hours, Pak, or even 24 hours to serve the load over there. That's the first initiative that we will do in the condition of our power supply. The second one is that we right now have a lot of coal power plant, and we will change 10% or 20% or even more or 30% of the coal changing to biomass. So by doing this, because we have a lot of almost 50 to 60% of energy coming from the fossil. So by doing this, we hope that 6% of biomass will come to the system, and it will help to get the 23% of renewable energy. Yeah, that's the second part. The third part, that we will accelerate some of the hydropower, some of the geothermal that is belong to the 35,000 megawatts scheme before, that coming to the system in 2025. We hope that there will be totally of 4,000 megawatts about geothermal and hydro with accelerating systems that will come to the system, because it's already built around 5 or 6 years before, so we hope that it will come into the system very soon. And the other things that we will do is that we also build the solar power. So for the grid, so there will be 3,000 introduced to Sumatra system, 3,000 by the next 5 years in 2025. So only 3 or 4 years. And the other things that we will do, that after 2023, after 2022 exactly, there will be no new coal power plant introduced to the systems. So if we need a power plant to serve the base load, we will introduce renewable energy that can act as base load. So, for example, if we use solar, it means that we need battery. If we use wind, we need battery. So we hope that the combination of the system, especially the battery, there will be new technology coming in maybe for the next 5 years or 10 years, so that it can challenge the price of coal to the combination of intermittency with battery, of course. So we hope this will happen for the next years, because we can see in the website a lot of new technology of battery introduced. So we hope we can reduce the price of the battery so that we can use like that. And starting from 2030, and we hope at 2060 there will be 1,800 terawatt hours. We have right now 300, so the difference is 1,500 terawatt hours. So starting from 2030, the 1,500 terawatt hours, all of them will be built by using the renewable energy. So a lot of opportunity actually possible to grow the renewable energy in Indonesia, starting in the 23% and of course in the 2060 to 2060. We also introduce CCUS because we still see whether it is possible to get the low cost of battery. If not, we maybe still use the coal power plant or the gas power plant, but we use the CCUS to make the emissions of that fossil power plant lower. If the battery cannot compare the price with gas or with coal, we hope it can be achieved by the next 10 years or 15 years, of course. The next 10 technology that we use is hydrogen, yeah, but we hope that the hydrogen is possible to use in Indonesia. And another new technology, especially CCUS, we hope that it is also available that we can also use to fossil power plant. So yes, we think that the key of the success of transitions from right now, yeah, from fossil power plant to green power plant, and to get net zero emission by 2060, we can achieve by the helping of technology, especially the battery technology. And we also introduce actually the energy transition mechanism also, but we still waiting about the possibility that get helping from abroad about how actually the scheme to minimize the use of fossil power plant and changes to renewable energy, but also still possible to have the financial of PLN still in a good conditions, because we have take or pay scheme with a lot of IPP for the next 30 years, Pak. So this is the questions. This is the conditions right now. We need to respect our contract. That's why we hope that the CCUS is available, and then we can use it the coal power plant by minimize the emission by using the CCS. Maybe that's part the short answer for your questions. Thank you, Pak.
Terima kasih, Pak Edwin. That was a very comprehensive answer. And as you've mentioned, right, Indonesia has some unique challenges. Being a large coal-producing country, moving into alternative energy, I think you've outlined the challenges very well. And thank you for your very comprehensive answer. I now move on to the second question, which is to Ms. Nikki Grady-Smith, Senior Vice President, Corporates and City Solutions for BP. So, Nikki, BP has, a very strong history and tradition in the energy business, in the energy transition business. You have experience in Indonesia, you have experience in the rest of the world. So my question to you is, right, based on your experiences, what are the challenges that you believe that Indonesia has in dealing with this energy transition process? And also, what can we learn? What can Indonesia learn from Europe's experiences in this particular aspect? Nikki, over to you.
Firstly, thank you for inviting me to the event. I'm really honoured to represent BP at the forum. And as you said, we've had a long history in Indonesia. I'm really encouraged by Ministry's initiative here to strengthen relationships between Indonesia and Europe, not only from a government-to-government perspective, but also involving the business community, which will further enable us to boost economic recovery through investment in trade. And as Indonesia and the world recover from COVID, I think we have a unique opportunity to build back better and to accelerate the energy transition. I think that will enable us to prepare jobs for the future and to decarbonize key industries. But the energy transition has different challenges depending on where you are in the world. So decarbonisation of the UK, where I am right now, is going to look different to decarbonisation of Indonesia. But Indonesia has significant potential across a range of renewable energy technologies, be that solar, wind, hydro, or geothermal, just to name a few. However, what I think is going to be a challenge, and some of this has been raised already, is Indonesia and most nations face what we call an energy trilemma. So in simple words, how are we going to provide energy that is clean, reliable, and at the same time affordable? Furthermore, a just transition is going to be another challenge. Phasing out the coal-fired power plants in a region where coal is in abundance, and it's not going to be easy. But the recent introduction and the future progression of the carbon tax is going to help here. And it could create a new economy and even accelerate the energy transition. If you look to a neighbouring country like Australia, for example, they've gained significant revenue streams from its carbon credit market. But the energy transition is going to be complex. We know there isn't a single answer. There's no single fuel going to dominate the future, and multiple technologies are going to play different roles. So I'd really reflect on two key learnings that I think are critical. And one of them was picked up earlier around collaboration. Collaboration across multiple sectors, collaboration both public and private, collaboration between suppliers, manufacturers, financial institutions, and government will allow knowledge sharing, fast track of new technologies, and de-risking investments. You also need to bring together that supply and demand and promote incentives and policies that can act as catalysts. And all of those, for me, are very critical elements in the energy transition. The second thing that I think is going to be really important is support to transitioning companies. Those that can make a big impact themselves in the energy system. And that includes companies that are not low carbon today, but are really serious about becoming low carbon and are in the process of transitioning. And I'd use BP as an example of that. As we've already mentioned, BP's been a strategic partner to the government of Indonesia for over 55 years now. And we've invested $20 billion and we'll continue to want to invest in the country. Almost all of our business streams operate in Indonesia, with our main business, Tangguh LNG and Papua Barat, being one of the biggest gas producing fields in Indonesia. And I'm going to use that as an example of how BP is greening. It's using multiple technologies there to progress the energy transition. And it starts really with an energy efficient design, an energy efficient plant design. It's one of our lowest greenhouse gas intensity designs that we have. We also sell gas to premium Asian LNG market, which has considerably lower shipping emissions versus some others. And we now have our CCUS program, which has recently been improved by the Indonesian government. So thank you for that. That will sequester 90% of the reservoir CO2 back into the ground. In addition, we're electrifying non-critical equipment on site with solar panels. And in the future, we're looking at initiatives around mangrove preservation surrounding the site. And furthermore, we're seeking to further develop potential. So in the renewable space through Lightsource BP, we're exploring several opportunities in Indonesia. So floating PV, the solar farm. And we're also very excited that the new Capital City Bill has been announced, in particular because we think we've got some learnings that we can build on from our experience in Aberdeen and Valencia in building integrated energy hubs. We want to continue to play a major role in Indonesia's decarbonisation journey. We want to leverage our experience to help Indonesia reach its net zero goals. Thank you.
Nikki, thank you very much. And honestly, as you mentioned, right, $20 billion in Indonesia from BP, genuinely praiseworthy. And what you mentioned, I think is really important, right? For almost all emerging markets, even developed markets, to get to this, carbon zero status is not going to be easy. You spoke about collaboration. And to me, the collaboration between the government and the private sector has got to work at its finest for Indonesia to get to a net carbon zero kind of position. So we move now to our next speaker. Our next question is for Antonio Sierra, founder and CEO of Ignis Energy. Ignis is the largest solar PV energy developer in Spain and one of the fastest growing energy companies in Europe. Senor Antonio, Indonesia is a huge country, 270 million people spread across 17,000 islands, spanning 5,000 kilometers from east to west. The energy market and the types of final consumers are so diverse, going from small villages in remote areas to giant cities, and including massive private consumers as well. What are the options for alternative energy, which in your opinion are best suited to Indonesia? And given your experience in the European and in the global markets, what is the strategic direction that Indonesia should consider adopting? Senor Antonio, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning from Madrid, Spain, and thanks for the opportunity of having this interaction to share knowledge and about energy sector and renewables. So I'm honored to represent my company here today, Ignis. As you said before, we are a fast-growing company, founded just 7 years ago. We grew a lot in the renewable sector. We are now developing 22,000 megawatt of renewable projects across 7 countries. And one important thing also is that my company Ignis has a 6% market share in the Spanish electricity market, which is a 250 terawatt hour market. So it's slightly lower than the Indonesian one, growing literally from 0 5 years ago. So we manage a diverse portfolio of hydro, wind, solar, CCGT, gas-fired power plants, CHP power plants. And we receive a signal from our TSO, Red Eléctrica, every 4 seconds to balance the power supply and demand every 4 seconds into the market. So we are now working together with the Spanish government and the TSO in order to implement also demand side management in order to incorporate the demand to this ancillary services market, which we believe is one of the potential solutions to the big challenge that Indonesia is facing with the decarbonization in the future. So going directly to your question, I learned from the team that we have in Indonesia that have more than 20 years experience there, and that Indonesia has all the ingredients to really succeed in the energy transition strategy. So not only good renewable resource, as mentioned, but it also has very well prepared and skilled people, and is facing a significant economic growth in the last years. So yes, diversity of customers, amount of islands represent a huge challenge for the electricity sector and for the decarbonization strategies, but the solutions for security of supply are there. I think in that field, PLN is doing an amazing work, as expressed before. I think renewable development and renewable deployment, I think we believe we can learn from each other and collaborate and establish a framework of cooperation that allow European companies to invest in Indonesia in renewables in this particular field. I believe, and I think it's the strategy mentioned before by Mr. Edwin Putra, I think is the right strategy to be deployed. So from these isolated electricity systems, which might have a diesel power plant, the strategy could be very well to transform that site, particular diesel power plant, into a wind, solar, and battery site, not dismantling the old diesel power plant, keeping it just for security of supply reasons and for maybe balancing moments in which you don't have a renewable resource. That particular isolated electricity system could maybe not reduce to 0 the emissions, could maybe not be 100% renewable, but you can really experience very high stakes of renewable source into this particular isolated system, maybe 60, 70, 80%, and just using the diesel power plant for the 20% of the time. So these diesel power plants, as you very well know, have the availability to go up and down. To balance the frequency of this isolated system with the power, frequency and power, it's possible to be done. I mean, you are doing this every day in this challenging system that you have, and that's something that we can learn from each other in order to really deploy a strategy of implementing renewables. We've done so in Spain. We have substituted 300 megawatt CCGT, gas-fired CCGT, by a project of 500 wind and solar, very close to one of our developments, which is the largest European solar power plant with 800 megawatts, which we manage every 4 seconds, going up and down, as I said. And I think incorporating the demand side of the curve to this balancing of the system could be very beneficial, not only for customers, but also for the system itself, could make the electricity cheaper and affordable and help solve the trilemma that Nikki said before, which I think is challenging, but it's really something that is a good challenge for a lot of European companies. There is a lot of liquidity out there in the financial market to invest in this type of strategies and to invest in renewable assets. I think to establish a collaboration in renewables between countries could help also not only in the transformation of the electricity sector itself, but also many other sectors. We have experienced that the demand curve of electricity is elastic, and the more you lower the cost of electricity, the more you can dig into other sectors such as water with desalination plants. Water could be very cheap and affordable also for some of the islands that are paying a lot of price for the water today. Chemicals with ammonia and methanol, for example, mining industry, all these industries are facing challenges with regard to decarbonization, and these industries could also benefit from a cheaper and cleaner energy resource. So just last but not least, Ignis is pleased to collaborate with all the stakeholders involved in Indonesia to help to implement an attractive framework and to stimulate investment in Indonesia. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Senor Antonio. And as you mentioned, right, I think Indonesia is in a position similar to many other countries in the emerging world and in the developed world. So having the experience of companies which are in the European market, in the global market, to be used in Indonesia will definitely put the consumer here in a better position. Before I move on to our fourth speaker, may I just remind our participants and our audience, if you have any questions, please do key them into the chat box so we can ask them and have the answers live from our participants. Yeah. So please don't be shy. Questions are free. The answers might cost you though. The next question is to Mr. Christopher Gower, CEO of Altilium Group. Bapa Chris, I know you're based in Jakarta. Selamat sore. Indonesia is driving to be one of the world's leading EV battery suppliers. Indonesia is rich with natural resources required for battery production like nickel, the largest producer of nickel in the world. So this will not only help the domestic EV industry, it can also be the source of much valued foreign exchange from exports. Your company, Altilium Group, has a patented DNI process, right, which helps to extract metals like nickel and cobalt in a sustainable way to fuel electric vehicle batteries and to build a greener planet. So the question to you, given your experience, given your company and your background, what technology and processes should Indonesia adopt to be able to actually progress down this path and to be able to leverage its abundant mineral resources without causing wastage or spoilage for the next generation? Chris, over to you.
Terima kasih, Pak, and selamat sore. Thank you very much. I'll try to not make this sound like just an advertisement for my company and its process. Speak more generally about the industry itself. Given that the EV industry, the switchover from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles is being driven by a desire to address, in the first instance, clean air and bigger picture climate change issues. It would be rather fickle if the processing of the ore that we need to deliver the metals for the batteries and for the cars created environmental damage. And yet that is what is happening and has been happening for some time, even before the industry came along. In terms of what is the best technology should be a sustainable technology, and that the technology should not leave behind a long-term environmental problem which needs to be contained or monitored or somehow addressed. I also think, as was stated in the introduction by Sumit, the Indonesia's resources are vast, but it's a laterite resource, and the laterites contain more metals than existing processes are currently extracting. So the dominant technologies in the world today are the ferronickel, RKEF, nickel pig iron technology, which processes the saprolite in the limonite, and the saprolite is your metal-rich ore, and has the highest grades of nickel. And that process extracts the nickel and the iron and discards the rest. And there's some real value in what is discarded. The other process recently developed in Indonesia, recently initiated in Indonesia on Obi Island is the HPAL, the high pressure acid leach process. And that process has been around since the 60s. The first plant was built in the early 60s in Cuba. And it's been a technology that it's problematic. It's a complicated flow sheet, uses high pressure, which requires an autoclave and a titanium autoclave with complex ceramic brick lining. What it does is it extracts the nickel and the cobalt and some of the scandium, but it's processing the low-grade limonite. It can't touch the saprolite, or very much of the saprolite, because that has a lot of magnesium in it, and magnesium is a poison to that particular process. It causes the acid usage to go up. So in my mind, a process that processes both the limonite and the saprolite together in one flow sheet, in one plant, is an ideal process. If that process then also extracts all of the available metals, which in the ore, and principally in Indonesia, you're talking about nickel, cobalt, scandium, iron, and magnesium. There may be some manganese, there may be some rare earths, and it's just a question of whether it's economic to extract those from solution. Then you're making the best use of the resource. You're maximizing the value that's being extracted, and you're maximizing the utilization of the lateritic ore body. Because our process recycles its acid, so we use nitric acid, which is used by the laboratories. It's been used in laboratories for a long time now. It's recognized as very, very good at dissolving metals into solution. But if you can recycle your nitric acid, which we do, that means you produce an inert residue. So to give you some idea, the HPAL residue is about 1 to 1.5 times the volume of the ore that's processed, because they need to neutralize the tailings, and they do that using calcium carbonate, and then they dispose of that, they throw that away. Because we recover and recycle 99% of our acid, our tailings are essentially silicates with some trace amounts of nitrates in there. And the trace amount of nitrates effectively make the residue a fertilizer. So the fertilizer, so that can be returned to the mine to aid growth, and when the mine is rehabilitated. In Indonesia, that solves another problem, which is in a lot of laterite areas, or a lot of areas where laterites are found, the topsoil is nutrient poor. So the miners need to bring in compost to increase the nutrient load to get trees and regrowth going on the clay site. So our residue fulfills that purpose and produces, say, it's got magnesium nitrate primarily in it. The ideal process, as said, does not leave a residue, does not leave any long-term environmental issues, and also doesn't dump its tailings in the sea, which is one of the other problems. Now, the Indonesian government is to be applauded for having decided that that won't happen any longer because of the value of the sea, the value of the coral, and also the necessity for fishing for the local kampungs. So that is what our process does, and I think that is the ideal process. And there are other processes that may be able to do have some of those features as well. In terms of the opportunity for Indonesia, the world is not going to get the electric vehicles it wants on the road in the time frame that is desired by governments and the production schedules that have been announced by vehicle manufacturers, unless Indonesia plays a role in this industry. Indonesia is absolutely key because of the size of the resource it's got. And to give you some idea, by 2030, the world should have 5,000 gigawatt hours of gigafactory capacity. And yet Tesla alone has said that they will be producing over 20 million cars a year by 2030. And 20 million cars is about 1,000 tons of nickel. So nickel is the largest cost contributor to the battery. The battery is the largest cost contributor to the vehicle. If nickel stays at the sort of price it's at the moment, up over 24,000, or I think personally anything sort of over about 18,000, it's going to make the cars more expensive, and therefore it retards the mass adoption of those vehicles. So clearly you need vehicles across a broad range of price points. So Indonesia, say, has an opportunity, and I would like to address the people from the European companies, the OEMs, battery manufacturers who may be on this webinar, and that is come to Indonesia and look at investing here in developing plants to deliver the battery metals that you will need. Because at the moment, the battery metals being produced here are largely or almost exclusively going to China. And they're going to China because the Chinese companies are the only companies who've been investing here over the last several years. So it needs European companies to come out here. It needs best practice to be brought. So we don't see situations where you see runoff and tailings ending up in the sea, or even if inadvertently. And that way you'll secure the supply chain of the metals that you're going to need. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Again, very insightful comments, and some of the numbers you mentioned there, pretty instructive. We are very happy that Altilium Group has headquartered itself in Jakarta, that you're based here, because again, I think the kind of scale and size of operations we have in terms of extraction, Indonesia has to be a natural bet for a company in your industry and of your size. I now move to the last question at this stage to Alper Cilik, Managing Director, Global Head of Project and Export Finance from Standard Chartered. Alper, we know that moving to a net zero emission state for pretty much every country, right, requires a lot of cost and a lot of investment. And this cost and investment can be prohibitive. Yeah, we heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bu Retno Marsudi, talk about the fact that Indonesia will need, I think she mentioned, 25 to 30 billion US dollars in the next 8 years, right? That's a lot of money. So given the fact that this is one of the reasons why companies are reluctant to move down this carbon zero position, right? My question to you is, what commercially viable financing options are available to corporates, both Indonesian and European, to participate in Indonesia's energy transition process? And just to make it a little bit controversial, of the 300 billion that Standard Chartered is willing to put into this pot, how much are you planning to put into Indonesia? Alper, over to you.
Thank you very much. I love the last twist in the question, and I'm more than happy to address that, Sumit. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It is a great pleasure and honor to be here at such an important forum and very close to our hearts and minds at Standard Chartered Bank. You will know it, but for the benefit of the audience, Standard Chartered Bank has been established in Jakarta in 1863. So we have been in the country, over decades, and we are very proud and committed to supporting the governments, SOEs, as well as private sector corporations and the financial institution in Indonesia, as we have done so over the past many years. So I will not fudge the question. I will come to the question in a second, but allow me to address the first part of your question, because I think it's very important. Now, often, as you rightly mentioned, and I noted down as well, the $25 billion infrastructure or investment gap. I mean, it is, I would agree with pretty much everything that's been discussed on this forum. Certainly, I think the importance of the the collaboration and new technologies in terms of a path from the current status to transition, it will take time. I think we all agree with that. And we also agree that that will require investments and sustainable investments. Now, just to give you a bit of a global perspective, and I want to see this sort of the full side of the glass at all times, and so that we can compare. When we refer to infrastructure gap, right, this is by a World Bank estimate. There's a $15 trillion of infrastructure gap in the world, out of which $10 trillion is attributed to emerging markets, and out of that $8 trillion gap is to emerging Asia and China by 2040. Huge numbers, right? $8 trillion. But if you flip this to the other side of the coin, and if you look at the investments that is expected to be made, that will be $66 trillion of investment expected to be made into sort of the global markets, and out of that $43 trillion is into emerging markets, right? So while the gap is huge, at the same time, the investments planned and will be financed through various sources is also huge. If you look at the project financing volumes, by project finance, what they mean is this is not financing going into directly to governments or SOEs. This is the amount of financing that goes into specific to the projects. What we call in the financing world is non-recourse or limited recourse. That has also gone up considerably over the past several years. And I think you referred to the volumes of sustainable bonds and loans as well. So in 2021, out of the $530 billion of project financing that took place globally, around 26% of that has gone into renewable energy. Okay, so if you looked at those numbers 5 years ago and 10 years ago, you wouldn't be able to see a fraction of that amount. So year on year, the amount of capital and investment going from the finance community into sustainable, renewable, green projects are increasing, and it will continue to do so. How are we going to achieve this? I think Nikki mentioned, and Antonio also referred to, a global cooperation. I would like to expand the definition of this stakeholders in this, because I think it's very, very important. Obviously, banks will play a very important part, and Standard Chartered, you know, as you mentioned, and as I also confirmed, we have made a statement during COP26, and we said that we are going to help facilitate $300 billion of financing in green and transition financing by the end of the decade. So it is a very large number, but given the context of the gaps that we are referring to, it's not going to be obviously sufficient. So certainly international banks will play a role. Local banks will play a very big role. We know that, and we cooperate with the local banks in Indonesia quite actively. Local banks will play a very important role because we believe the required financing will not be only in the form of hard currency as we define it in dollars and euros and whatnot, but also local currency financing. Therefore, we have to cooperate with local banks, DFIs and export credit agencies. So we have a very close relationship with all the key export credit agencies around the world. And by basically a mandate directly coming from their governments and the board of directors, export credit agencies are very committed to increase the support they provide to emerging Asia, emerging markets, to finance sustainable and green projects. In addition to that, of course, developers, technology developers, energy developers, multinational organizations like BPs, like Ignises, certainly a partnership opportunities, joint ventures with the Indonesian companies will be required. Also, we are seeing a lot of interest from sovereign wealth funds, infrastructure investment funds, institutional investors who are keen to invest into long-term fixed rate investment opportunities in emerging markets. So every day we are getting requests and inquiries from this stakeholder group to establish partnerships and to evaluate joint opportunities in our markets, certainly including Indonesia, perhaps one of the core markets in Asia from our perspective and from our investors' perspective. Now, and also there are great examples of these, right? So, and I will separate this into two. One, when we look at the technologies that are proven, and we call them as conventional, perhaps the solar and offshore wind, onshore wind, hydro, geothermal opportunities, as Mr. Pereso mentioned, and also the new technologies, right? CCUSs and hydrogens and batteries. Now, there is a differentiation between the two because the first piece, conventional piece, and I'm referring to this from a financier's perspective, the infrastructure has already been set up. Regulatory environment has already been set up and tested, right? Subsidy systems, long-term tariffs, off-take contracts. For the conventional piece, it's been tested around the world in emerging markets and Indonesia as well. So we need to be more agile quick, efficient, and broaden the partnership opportunities that I just referred to increase the volumes in that space. And then the new technology piece, the CCUSs and hydrogens and batteries, when it comes to bankabilities and feasibility of these projects, we will need support from the governments, and we will need support from the multilateral development banks and ECAs, because some of those projects that we see today are not 100% bankable, are not 100% investable. They're almost there, but in order to get them over the threshold, we will need the likes of EBRDs or the World Banks, MIGAs to come and support the financing of those projects so that the private banks and investors feel comfortable to deploy capital into those projects until it comes a point that the same regulatory environment, the same bankability PPAs are replicated the way that we have seen on the wind and solar side. So, and I would like to close this off, at least from my perspective, by referring to one great example that we have seen in Indonesia. Last year, in 2021, Standard Chartered Bank has been proud to be a mandated lead arranger to a floating solar power plant in Indonesia. Cirata floating projects, 145 megawatts, and it was unique for Indonesia, but also globally, and from a technology perspective and feasibility perspective, it was a very, very important project as well. So with a great partnership with PLN and also with contribution from Masdar, the transaction has been a great success, and we certainly would like to see more of these projects supported by the Indonesian government. The financing is abundant, it is available. We just need to come together and channel the quantum of financing that is needed to close the gap of that $25 to $30 billion infrastructure investment in Indonesia collectively. And we are more than happy to and committed to do our part as Standard Chartered Bank. Thank you.
Alpo, thank you very much. Again, we're talking about really large numbers here. It's really great to see the commitment which the banking system is actually putting into this transition for emerging and for developed markets. So Alpo, thank you very much for your comments. Before we now get to the stage where we are asking participants to ask us questions, I have some welcome news. We have a welcome announcement from His Excellency Benedetto Latteri, the Ambassador of Italy. If I can request His Excellency to please come on stage and to make his announcement. Or you can make it from your table also if you want.
Maybe I can stay here. Thank you very much. A very big thanks to the KEMLU for organizing this very good seminar. These are very good initiatives to bring together economic operators from Indonesia and from Europe. As a matter of fact, this initiative is very close to another initiative that the Italian Trade Commission is going to organize in the near future. Starting from the end of March, there will be seminars for bring together Italian operators and Indonesians on the same three sectors of the panel we are covering today and tomorrow. So we are going to have machine tools, a webinar on machine tools, which are integral part of supply chain. Another seminar on pharmaceutical and health. And the third webinar will be on energy transition. So the same panel we are discussing, subject of the panel of today. So there will be plenty of interest for the Italian, but also the Indonesian companies to participate in these webinars. Stay tuned on the website of the Italian Embassy and especially of the Italian Trade Commission in Jakarta for this panel and further announcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Your Excellency, thank you very much. Very welcome announcement, and we will await this event with bated breath. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, big thank you to our panelists for their opening remarks. And now we come to the next stage of our discussion, which is Q&A from the floor. Before we get to the Q&A, I have one more task for our panelists. Before we close this webinar, I would like each of our 5 panelists to think of maybe 1 or maximum of 2 words or phrases to describe the opportunity in energy transition in Indonesia. Yeah? So we'll come to you at the very end before we close. So let's move on to the questions, Q&A, right? So I have one question from Antonio Munoz. And the question reads as follows. How can big-scale solar power plants help the bigger private consumers, and how can the direct relationship between private consumers and RE producers be established, stabilized, and stimulated? So, is there anyone in the panel who wants to put their hand up to answer this question, or will I just choose someone from the panel? Can I ask Senor Antonio, would you like to go first?
A pleasure. Thanks a lot. Well, we do have experience in transforming energy consumption from clients to renewable energy consumption, and the idea is really to first to understand with our partners and all the stakeholders involved, so the operator of the network and the operator of the distribution assets and the operator of the power plants that are associated to those clients. So the first stage is to understand really what's the behavior of this consumer and what are the challenges that they are facing with regard to security of supply. So it might be a client that needs energy, and a backup of energy, like a hospital, for example. It could be a client that could afford to have certain, cutoffs from the energy supply in certain moments of the day. And first, understanding really the consequences of the energy supply to that particular customer, it's possible to design a solution in collaboration with all the stakeholders involved. So a solution that could be, as I said before, not maybe 100% renewable, but maybe 80% renewable, with the backup from thermal power plants, with batteries, with solar, wind, etc. And that is possible to do it with cooperation. We have in Ignis the experience of doing so, this route to the market, this route to renewables. And it's a challenge, but it's perfectly feasible under good economic conditions for majority of the customers, really. So they would pay even less for the energy than coming from fossil fuels. So we are now in this perfect storm situation in which all the stakeholders involved could be very happy. So local administrations, landowners of the land that is associated to the renewable projects that could benefit from the rental agreements. So local governments with taxes, distribution companies with a cleaner source of energy. So that is really the perfect storm. And I think we believe Indonesia is really has all the ingredients to succeed in this energy transition strategies.
Thank you very much, Senor Antonio. We have one more question from Anwar Hakim. And the question reads as follows. Should the government radically cut off fossil oil subsidy to promote transition to NREs and decarbonize? How ready is the investment market to anticipate and support the transition? Difficult question, and I can think of no person better qualified to answer this than Pa Edwin dari PLN.
Okay.
Pa Edwin?
Okay, Pak. Thank you. Well, first, I would like to explain the last questions, Pak, about our customer in Indonesia, especially in PLN. So there are several ways that customer, especially the big customer, would like to have the renewable energy from their part. First, they would like to have the solar PV in the attic part. So PLN ready Pak to help them to build that solar PV, and they calculate the renewable energy, especially the carbon credit that coming from the solar for them Pak. The other way is that they don't care whether we build the renewable energy close to them or not close to them, but in the same systems. So the interconnection system. So, for example, they have 100 MVA load, and they also would like to have 100 megawatt peak solar PV built in our system. So there is a possibility like that. So yes, we can build the solar for them, and then the renewable energy, the carbon credit come for them, Pak. And the last one is that actually they build their own solar, Pak, and they use our transmission in power wheeling. So we just charge them. They put their solar in, say, east of Java, and they have their factory in the west of Java, and we transmit the power so that we charge them by using the power wheeling. So there are three options, Pak, that right now possible to do in Indonesia, especially in PLN, if our customer would like to change their energy to green energy, Pak. And the last questions is about is it possible for well, actually right now the government of Indonesia will put the carbon tax, Pak, for the fossil, yeah, so that yes, there will be problems, of course, by the coal power plant, because the tax will make the price of the coal higher, and in the system it makes them less. The system will not choose them, Pak, because the prices get higher, Pak. But we need times, of course, Pak, because 60% of our energy coming from coal power plants. So we need times, Pak, to change from coal to renewable energy. And the other thing is that we also need the industry not only possible have in the outside of Indonesia, but we would like to have the industry in Indonesia, Pak. You know that right now we have 300 terawatt hours, and we will go to 1800, Pak, by the next 40 years. So 1500 terawatt hour, we need to build 250 megawatt power plants. We hope this is coming from solar or wind or geothermal or hydro, but the technology, we hope that it will come from Indonesia, Pak, so that, yeah, we hope that the technology will grow in Indonesia, and not only coming from outside of Indonesia. So yes, we hope that from Europe can coming in, build the factory over here, so that our industry also get larger in Indonesia and not only buy it from abroad, Pak. Maybe that's my answer, Pak. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Pak Edwin. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answer. Thank you. We have time for one last question, which I'll address to Chris Gower. So, Chris, the EV battery market is still small. There are only 6 large producers in the world, right? And there are limited number of very large buyers, right? So Tesla itself, I believe, accounts for more than the next 5 competitors put together. So my question to you, right? A lot of, Indonesia has been putting a lot of efforts into building an ecosystem around the nickel extraction. Indonesia wants to be one of the leading suppliers for EV batteries. How quickly do you see this kind of battery demand scaling up in the years to come? Chris Gower, please.
Thank you. A good question and a fair question. Yes, there are a limited number of EV battery manufacturers at the present time. But that number is set to rapidly grow. You've got simple examples like Volkswagen announcing that Volkswagen is going to build their own battery. They're not going to use anybody else's. So they're going to enter the market. You've got the people who've announced the various gigafactories in Europe. Some of those gigafactories have investment from existing battery manufacturers, and some are greenfield investors into the battery industry. You've also got the desire on the part of Western governments and companies based in Europe, UK, North America to secure their supply chain of battery materials, whether it's raw materials or in Indonesia's interest, we want to see Indonesia exporting developed products, not raw materials, but securing those supply chains without Chinese involvement. So at the moment, China controls so much of the battery market. And there's an associated industry in all of this, which is the rare earth market. Because rare earths are found in laterites, whether they're nickel laterites, aluminium laterites, or iron laterites. Rare earths are also there. And at the present time, China controls 90% of that particular market as well. So there is even more opportunity. I think that, I think it's going to grow very quickly. I think that given the number of vehicles that all of the manufacturers around the world have announced that they're going to have on the road come 2025, there's a crunch point. I think, unfortunately, the crunch point is right now, which means there's a slight problem because it does take time to build plants. But come 2024, if you hit the market with a plant that is delivering MHP, which is an ideal intermediate product for conversion into either nickel sulfates or PCAM or cathode active materials, you hit a sweet spot in the market. And I don't think you'll have any trouble finding a buyer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Sadly, our time is almost up. But before we finish, I do want to ask our panelists to tell us one word or maximum 2 words or phrases which best describes the opportunity for alternative energy in Indonesia. So can we begin with Nikki first? Nikki, what's your word or phrase?
That's tough. I think I would go for collaboration across multiple sectors is required to accelerate the energy transition.
Excellent. Collaboration. Thanks, Nikki. Can we have Alper next? Alper, what's your word?
Hi there, I'm here. So I was ready. Better together.
Better together. Excellent. Okay. Why don't we go to Edwin? Edwin, what is your word to describe Indonesia's potential in alternative energy?
Well, Pak, right now PLN is handle electricity. Next, PNL will handle the environment, Pak. So the word is challenging, Pak.
Challenging. that is absolutely correct. And I think no one will doubt you on that. And we'll all be supporting you about to make sure that PLN and Indonesia meets its energy transition targets. Great choice of word. Can we have Senor Antonio next?
I was going to use 2 words, indeed challenging but exciting, but I'm sorry for repeating the word challenging.
Challenging but exciting. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you, Antonio. And Chris, what's your word?
2 words, extraordinary opportunity.
Sorry, what was the first word?
Extraordinary. Extraordinary opportunity.
Extraordinary opportunity. Excellent. So we have collaboration, we have better together, we have challenging but exciting, and we have extraordinary opportunity. So with this, we will need to conclude our webinar for today. The Indonesia-Europe Business Forum 2022 will resume again tomorrow with another very high-powered panel on global trade and supply chain. You can still register for that if you haven't done that already. That just leaves me now to give a very warm thank you to our panelists, Bapa Edwin, Ms. Nikki, Senor Antonio, Bapa Chris, and Mr. Alper, thank you for a riveting discussion and your really thoughtful comments and insights. Before I say goodbye to all the people who've been listening in, a very short message. If you are in the alternative renewable energy space, whichever part of the world you're in, you need to consider Indonesia as a country to invest in. Indonesia is just too big to be ignored. Huge country, huge energy demand, stretching targets for the government, and as you heard from Pa Edwin from PLN, they've made some really strong commitments. The government cannot do this by itself. We spoke about collaboration. For Indonesia to meet its energy targets and its commitments, the private sector has to collaborate with the government. And events like this, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, demonstrate the intent of the Indonesian government, the intent to collaborate, the intent to provide support. So, for all you private sector participants from outside Indonesia, act now. Invest in Indonesia. The gates are still open, and they will be open for a very long time to come. But first movers will get an advantage. Act now, move now, secure the long-term future for your company. Thank you all. Gracias. Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you all for participating, and we hope to see you again tomorrow for tomorrow's session of the Indonesia-Europe Business Forum 2022. Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Pak. Terima kasih.
Not sure if there will be anyone coming back. But very nice to meet you in any case.